Witness the colossal boxing showdown nobody expected, live on Netflix. International superstar Jake Paul, the sport's most watched fighter, takes on Britain's two-time unified heavyweight world champion and Olympic gold medalist, Anthony A.J. Joshua, in the most dangerous and defining matchup of their careers. This is Judgment Day. Watch Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua, Friday, December 19th at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, live on Netflix.
When the holidays start to feel a bit repetitive, reach for a Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry and put your twist on tradition. A bold cranberry and winter spice flavor fusion, Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry is a refreshing way to shake things up this sipping season. And only for a limited time. Sprite, obey your thirst.
This episode is presented by State Farm. Having insurance isn't the same as having State Farm. It's like needing the protection of an offensive guard on the football field, but getting an elementary school crossing guard. Sure, they're both guards, but you can only trust one to keep your quarterback safe when the game is on the line. So don't settle for just any insurance when there's State Farm. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Welcome to the 1905 podcast. Each week, Joe and I bring you our unfiltered takes on the highs, the lows, and everything in between, following the Blues from Gate 13 of the Matthew Harding Stand. Let's hit the notes. The final whistle has just blown. Cardiff 1, Chelsea 3, and wow, 15 minutes ago, I thought it might be a deja vu here from a week ago. Sat in the same spot in my living room watching the game, just like Atalanta, and had just the worst feeling when Cardiff equalised. But this time, Chelsea regrouped, went again, and yeah, thanks to Pedro Neto and André Garnacho, we are in the draw for the semi-final of the League Cup. So mission accomplished, but it flattered us, didn't it, a little bit, and it was certainly not vintage. But we came through and won the game, which is ultimately the most important thing. I think the thing I'm going to start with today is the drop-off in quality that we're seeing in that B squad and that B group that I think tonight's game really, really showed up. We have in my mind probably a group of 15 to 16 players now that are top-rate first-team players. And when you have them on the pitch, you see Chelsea at their top level. And I think that's a really good thing. And the fact that you have got, certain players that you can bring in now. I think even people like Malo Gusto have come in now, and we probably wouldn't have said it a year ago, but you look at him and Reece alongside each other, I think actually, yeah, I don't mind either of them. I think with the wingers, I think we've got three really good options in Pedro Neto and Garnacho, who we'll certainly talk more about, and Estevao as well. There's good rotations there. I thought André Santos, again, I thought he was good tonight. And I think him alongside Enzo and obviously Caicedo, I think you've got good rotations. So I think there are areas of the pitch where the players are coming in and looking good. And then you have other players who are just clearly not at the level for Chelsea. And the obvious place for me to start, I think, is the front players, because the first half, the front four of Marc Guéhi up front, Jamie Gittins on the left, Buonanotte and Tariq George, they're just not good enough. They're just not good enough. I'm going to say at the moment, because they're all very young, but they all look to me like if they were playing for a lower Premier League, higher Championship type club, they wouldn't look out of place. I mean, Buonanotte was obviously on loan at Leicester last season, who got relegated from the Prem, and he looks about that level to me. Tariq George, obviously Fulham, very close to buying him in the transfer window. Again, he looks about that level for me, and I think it's a problem. I think it's going to be. I think down to I thought Buonanotte, if I go on him, was really lucky to come out in the second half. I think he was a banker in my mind to be taken off at half time. He was awful in the first half. In fairness to him, he did improve in the second half, and he did very well for Garnacho's first goal. So credit where it's due. It was a really good interception and a really good pass, and he had a couple of good moments in the second half. But in the first half, he was terrible. And just to a man, Tyreek, I thought in the first half had little moments. He was a bit unlucky with a couple of balls. Jamie Gittins just on his heels all the time. He's really frustrating me as a player to watch at the moment. I used the word passive a lot last week, and the way he plays feels like that. It's always just a bit lackadaisical, a bit casual. And there was a couple of moments in the first half where if he was there, like sprinting to the back post, he would be there to maybe get a tap in and get easy goals. He's not doing it. And you saw the level up in quality when we brought on the subs in the second half. But I think I've got to talk about the defenders as well. I mean, Jorgensen in goal, okay, he hasn't done anything wrong tonight, but he just fills you with nerves every time he's in goal for us, coming for crosses, and hopefully he doesn't flap at it. He takes one of our players out. He likes to do that, doesn't he? And it just fills you with nerves. And then Tosin and Badiashile gave the ball away just so badly a couple of times. It nearly caught us out once in the first half. And then Tosin on their goal, just so flat-footed. You watch it again, he just stands still on the edge of the box as the cross is clearly going to come in. It's horrific defending. And what I'll say about all those guys I've just mentioned is, I'm not going to say they're terrible footballers, because of course they're not. They're top-level footballers playing in the Premier League, but they're not Chelsea level. They're not Chelsea level. And I think if we want to be a really serious team this season and going forward, we need to keep raising the levels. And Maresca now, the easy games are over now, aren't they? We're through the League Cup. We're now to the semi-final. We're in big boy stuff in all the competitions. Maybe an early round of the FA Cup, perhaps. But he needs to start shrinking the squad size down and playing players that we know we can trust. And I think the excuses will be over for him if he continues to play people like Tosin, who almost to a man every game he plays will make a mistake that costs Chelsea at some point. And I know we feel like we pick on him a little bit on this pod, but we've got to say what we see. And some of these guys just aren't stepping up to the level that is required for Chelsea. Let's flip it to the positive though. And I think the obvious ones to talk about are the goal scorers tonight, because they were huge difference makers. Garnacho, I said when he signed for Chelsea, it was going to take a little while to get used to seeing him in a Chelsea shirt, and probably a little while to warm to him. Well, I have to say, I'm warming to him a lot, and not just tonight, but in recent weeks. And even after the game on Saturday, where he missed 2/3 really good chances against Everton, as I've said before, I don't mind that. I don't mind my attacking players missing chances. It's what I want to see. What I worry about is when my attackers aren't missing chances, like Jamie Gittins. Don't think he had a shot tonight, certainly not a shot of note. I want to see my players getting into those dangerous positions and always being a threat. Garnacho, you just know he's always going to do that. He is a very likeable player when he's in your team, because he's a pest, he's a constant runner. And him and Neto are kind of similar in some ways, because every time they get the ball, they're just going to drive with it. They're going to drive with it. And if you're a fullback, it's kind of the last thing you want. Neither of them are shot shy, which I like. Too frustrated of seeing wingers who don't want to shoot. Both of them are really good in that respect. Both of them actually pretty good on both feet as well. I've talked about before how good Neto is on both feet. Garnacho isn't bad either. Not bad at all. Obviously, he's a right-footed player, but if you see him going to his left, he's quite happy to pull back crosses, particularly on the left. And I thought both of his finishes today were absolutely superb. And obviously Pedro Neto, which was kind of a clutch moment, wasn't it, at that point? Because you did worry. You just thought, you were starting to look at it and go, I mean, if it went to penalties, it's a lottery. I'd already gone on and looked up the penalty stats of what Jorgensen's record is like in goal for penalties. And I can tell you now, he's faced 17 penalties in his career and he's saved 0. He's not saved a penalty yet in his career, certainly not in open play. So that didn't fill me with confidence. I was starting to work out who the takers would be, but it was a really good strike. A little deflection, obviously, but a really good goal. Just such an important moment from him. And then obviously Garnacho again with a great finish after a good ball from João Pedro, who should have scored himself. a couple of minutes before, shouldn't he? I thought, having done quite well to get him behind, to not hit the target and flush it over the bar, I have to admit I was, let's say, screaming silently in my head at that point. But Chelsea did the business. I'll pick out a couple of other displays. I thought Caicedo, I mean, I talked about missing Palmer, and great to have him back on Saturday. You had the same feeling, didn't you, watching Caicedo? Not that you forget after 3 games just how good he is, but yeah, the level that he plays at is something else. It almost brings other people up with him. And as I mentioned before, I thought André Santos was really good. The tackle he made very late in the game at 2-1, where Cardiff were obviously, claiming half-heartedly for a penalty. It was such a good tackle, such an important tackle as well. Very brave to be back there. And I just love that he's so aggressive in the way he plays, in a positive way, both going forward and defensively. He's the opposite of passive. He's always active. He's always trying to make things happen and get on the ball. And I think I've not really seen him in a Chelsea shirt and not liked at least elements of his game. So that's really positive. But overall, I won't go through every player tonight, but I've done most of them, to be fair. But I thought overall, an important night for Chelsea, certainly an important night for Maresca after all of the recent press and media stuff, which I'm sure we'll talk about later in the pod a bit more, because that is not dying down just yet. It'll be interesting to hear what he says after the game tonight and if there's anything else said. But yeah, really important night for Chelsea, and we can now relax knowing that whatever happens in the other games in the competition, we were in those semi-finals, and at that point, you are very close to a big trip to Wembley, which, as I've said so many times, we have unfinished business with, because we need a domestic cup win at Wembley. It's been far too long. But yeah, I'll hand over to Joe. I am relieved, happy, and going to bed tonight increasingly understanding why there were so many Man United fans who were pretty disappointed to see André Garnacho leave, and particularly leave for Chelsea. Well done, Nashers.
Good morning and welcome into the new semi-finalists of the League Cup, Chelsea FC. Yeah, wasn't great. Bit of sarcasm in my voice there because, yeah, Chelsea were pretty poor on the night. And I always say this with cup games. Normally, if this was a Premier League match and Champions League game, I'd be maybe sticking the boot in a little bit more. But I always think these Championship sides, or maybe League One sides, they always up their game in these semi-finals or quarter-finals against the bigger teams, and you're always going to get a response from them. They want to be where you are, basically. So I'm always kind of never surprised when it happens, but Chelsea weren't very good. Let's be honest, they weren't great. We really did struggle in the opening 45 minutes. I didn't think we played, that well in the second half. We did what we had to do. I think the changes obviously worked. I think once again, I've said it more than once in the podcast, but when you're changing 2 or 3 players every single game at half time, your first 11 probably wasn't the right 11. Chris rightly says, and I don't want to go over what he said, but that Bournotte and 1 or 2 other players, they really weren't up to it. And he's right that the drop-off from those first 15 or so players to the rest of the squad is quite alarming. And the trouble is, there's a couple of players in there, to use Jamie Gittins as an example. He's 56 million quid. He's not someone that's cost 12 or 10, or you've taken a punt at 5 million or something. He's a lot of money, and at the moment he's giving, almost zero value for it. So, yeah, there's some alarming players in the squad that keep getting minutes, and we've said this before. It's not going to change, I don't think. I can say what I like about the 2 centre halves. I can talk about the forwards or the wingers being changed regularly too often, but I don't think Maresca's going to change his ways. But this sort of leads me on to Maresca. I'm not sure what's happening with him. Obviously, his press conferences, his last 2 that he's given, have been insane. Like, I text Chris and I said, is there something wrong with him? Is he ill? Because it's like he's stuck or he's broke. The stuff that he's coming out with is insane, like madness. The press conference he gave before this game, before the Cardiff game, was crazy. And I think Chris Sarai, we just couldn't make head nor tail of it. He's clearly, even though he won't say it, he's clearly had a row with the sporting directors or the ownership, or both, quite frankly. And someone has criticised him. We know that Maresca, from his Leicester days, does not like criticism. There was a few interviews he gave with them when he said, he would just walk. He doesn't care. I'll just walk and leave this team. We're first or second in the championship, and I'll just go. If you don't want me here, I'll go. And you feel like there's an element of that creeping into his press conferences of late, which has been a bit strange. And I don't want Chelsea to suddenly fall off a cliff because there's been some bad blood behind the scenes. But clearly, after that Atalanta game, there's been some words exchanged. I don't know who with, and he won't say. But Carvajal from Sky Sports was obviously asking his questions in the press conference before this match to try and clear up what he said. And he wouldn't. He just kept saying, I've said what I needed to say. It's all done with. It's finished. It's done. And he wouldn't elaborate on anything. And rightly so. I said this to Chris. The media and that journalist in particular, he kept coming. And he's like, no, what you said isn't clear. It's so far away from being clear that nobody knows what you're talking about. You're the one that brought this up. Nobody said you're under pressure. No one in the media said, you've lost a couple of matches, you've drawn a couple of matches since that fantastic Barcelona result. What's going on? No one said that. If anything, they've been quite pro-Maresca in the media. And yet he took that time and that moment to use the sort of media to what he would class as maybe his advantage. And sadly, it's sort of fallen, he's fallen flat on his face. He's got egg on his face, that's for sure. He doesn't seem to know how to get himself out of this. And I don't think these questions are now going to stop. This is the trouble. You might get a week, maybe, if Chelsea go on a run or two of maybe 3 or 4 matches where they win in a row, it might go away. But if Chelsea were to go, say, get a poor result against Newcastle and a poor result against Aston Villa in the upcoming games, I think these questions are going to keep coming now. And I have to say, he's brought this all on himself. Now, the question is he being asked to play Tosin and Badiashile? To give an example, Jamie Gittins, is he being said by the sporting directors they have to play because in January or in the summer we want to look to sell these players on and make some money out of them? If they're sitting in the reserves and not playing, then we can't cash in on them. That's one theory. The other theory is he wants to keep rotating, and the sporting directors and the owners are saying, don't keep doing that. Which I don't know which way he's falling at the moment. And annoyingly, for the supporters, we're just guessing. And it's a very unusual situation. It feels very uncomfortable watching him. I mean, that interview against, say, before the Cardiff game was really uncomfortable to watch. And I kind of would encourage anybody who's got any interest in Chelsea or whatever, go and listen to it. It's about 3 or 4 minutes long, this conversation. And even I was getting a bit like, oh, this doesn't feel nice vibes from it. And I just feel, well, Jamie Carragher's had his say on it. Whatever you think about Jamie Carragher, I don't think a lot of him, but he's still a journalist. And there's been 1 or 2 other people that have sort of said, Simon Jordan on Talk Sport, he was maybe a little less aggressive on his stance of Maresca. But basically, I think they both sense that maybe this guy isn't going to be at Chelsea next season. If he's had a run-in and an argument and he can't get past what's happened, then you might find that Chelsea are looking for a new head coach next season. Now, I'm not asking for that. Chris Sarai aren't asking for that. We are purely basically regurgitating the news. But at the moment, all is not well at Chelsea. It is definitely not all roses in the garden, sunshine and flowers. It's a little bit uneasy down there, but I'm just unsure as to what road and what path Maresca wants. Does he think he's not getting the backing from the sporting directors? Does he think that he's being asked to do one thing and they're asking for something else? It's very, very difficult to know. I think maybe we'll see in the upcoming games, team selections and what have you. And if Chelsea don't get results and certain players have played, we might well find, or we might sort of surmise that maybe it's going to be one route or the other. But at the moment, we're not too sure. But certainly viewing-wise, it's very uncomfortable. I know Chris has got his views on this as well, so I'll let him come in and speak on that himself. But as for my views on the game, briefly, I think that Chelsea did enough. I think with a lot of these teams in the Championship or lower, if you can get ahead of them, then you will eventually come out on top. It's when you go behind, particularly when you go away from home, it can sometimes be a little bit more difficult. But I always think with these new grounds, Cardiff's got this new stadium, not brand new, of course, but it's a nice new modern stadium. I always think teams like Chelsea and that will always go there and feel like it's not as bad as it used to be. Going down to their old stadium when it was like all on top of you, raucous crowd, feels like you're back in the 80s almost. I feel like they're the games that can be really awkward. But looking at the pitch last night, beautiful pitch, it would have suited Chelsea down to the ground. They didn't play that great, I know. We've said this a couple of times, Chris and I. For all of Chelsea's line-up issues that we've had of late, this was another one I looked at and went, oh my goodness me, Tosin and Badiashile yet again. Mark Gui up front, low furrow, Gittins on the left. Oh, I'm not too sure about that. And yeah, it just had who else is there? Tyreek George, not kicked a ball in anger for a long, long time. And Chris is right with what he says about them, us having a few kind of lower tier Premier League / Championship players in that team. And at the moment, that's what they look like. And you're always worried. You're hoping that you've got a player like Cole Palmer or Resteval or Caicedo can lift everybody up and bring them with you to kind of drag the teams through these games. And I think that does happen. But I think the longer this goes on, if Chelsea play that sort of team, let's say it's Man City in the semi-final, if they go through, I think Chelsea are going to find themselves in with one route, and that's out the competition. We're going to have to up our player kind of involvement if we're going to go any further in the competition. But I think I don't want to go on about the game too much because Chris has given a really good analysis of the game there. Yeah, Tosin was at fault for the goal. There was one or two other kind of moments in the game where he literally just passed the ball 60 yards past somebody, overhit passes again, long, but it's just not good enough. We know this. I'm sort of coming to terms with the fact that Tosin isn't good enough and Badiashile wasn't good enough, but at the moment they still keep getting minutes and there's not a lot I can do about that. I think I will leave it there today, for now, and let Chris jump back in with his thoughts on Maresca. I think I'm really pleased that Chelsea are obviously into the semi-finals of the League Cup. Chris rightly says, we've got unfinished business at Wembley. If we can go there and try and get ourselves a trophy, because we haven't done that for a little while at Wembley. Haven't had many, many, many visits to Wembley. Some good days and some bad days, of course. You can't grumble when your team's made a semi-final. And I'm going to try and stay on the positive side of that today and say they did their business. They did what they had to do. They've got a little break before Newcastle at the weekend. Newcastle play today, so let's hope they put a few players out that maybe are a little bit tired when we play them at the weekend. And let's hope 3 points on Saturday afternoon, which would be an absolute godsend because, boy, does this team need them at the moment.
Here's my 30-second story with Guinness. As soon as my sister and I get home for the holidays, we don't even unpack. We head straight to our pub. The bartender already knows our order, Guinness and fries. We laugh all night, catch up with old friends, and walk home with faces sore from smiling. It's one of my favorite nights of the year. That was my 30-second story with Guinness.
Guinness Draft Stout. Please enjoy responsibly. Imported by Diageo Beer Company, USA, New York, New York.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. You're ready to move your business forward, but first, you need to find the right team. Start your search with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It can help you reach qualified candidates fast, ensuring your listing is the first one they see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. See the results for yourself. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Oh, Hilton stay, your beds are soft and cozy. No lumpy couch, no stiff futon, no shower line at crack of dawn. Oh, Hilton stay, our holiday you're saving.
When you want holiday comfort you can count on, it matters where you stay. This season, enjoy spacious, comfortable rooms and friendly service when you book with Hilton instead. Hilton for the stay.
There was one Chelsea fan who was more nervous than any, I think, last night, and that was local lad, Di Williams, who is a friend of the show and was at the game in Cardiff. Oh, I know that Di would not have been able to live this one down if we hadn't won it. So Di was kind enough to offer to send us a voice note with his experience of what it was like in the ground. So yeah, over to you, Di.
Thank fuck for that. God, that would have made my life very difficult around here for quite a bit of time over Christmas. I don't think I'd be able to go for a beer at all. But we got the win in the end. They were very much up for the game. They didn't cause us too many problems on the attack, but we were just so passive. Didn't really seem to tend to press them. And I mean, they keep the ball at the back. They knock the ball about quite nicely, but they would have struggled under the press. But we just sat off them too much in the first half. Changes at half-time made a big difference. Garnacho and Joe Pedro coming on, changed the game really a bit, gave us a bit of a, Joe Pedro especially, gives a bit of a focal point attack. I think their centre-half struggled with him big time, which you'd obviously expect, given the golfing class between them, but still, you have to give Cardiff a bit of credit for the way they played. I have been told by a lot of my friends that they do play some really good football this year. They've got a lot of young local lads playing for them now, which obviously helps. But yeah, they weren't a bad side to watch. They didn't really do a lot. It was a tough watch, I'll be honest. Sat on the ground watching it. But we won. Win's a win. We move on. Semi-final of the Cup. It's what we all want, innit? Another domestic trophy. It's been a long time. Big shout out to the away fans. They were brilliant throughout. Second half especially. I guess when we livened up a bit, they livened up a lot more. Found it really interesting. They were singing Maresca's name at some point through the second half. I say, obviously, there's a big swing in opinion on him week in, week out. But it is nice. It's probably nice for him as well, given what's gone on in the last sort of 72 hours with his press conferences, that he's getting back in from the fans anyway. So that was good to see. But yeah, thanks for asking me to add my thoughts, Sheedy boy. I'll catch up with you later on. Hopefully catch you in JK soon for a beer. Cheers, mate.
Thank you again, Di, for the note. Fantastic and really interesting, actually, to hear the Chelsea fans' support for Maresca last night, wasn't it? Not heard a huge amount of it. It was actually about a year ago, almost to the day, where the Chelsea fans sung Maresca's name at Southampton away, when things were looking so good for us, sitting second in the league, and that bond was really growing. And then almost when we went on that bad run, the faith in Maresca, it definitely fell off a cliff, didn't it? And maybe we've been steadily trying to build that relationship back up again with him. But I think the fans coming out in such clear support of him yesterday said a lot, really. Said a lot where, I guess, we're putting our chips right now in terms of the club and sporting directors versus Maresca. And Joe, I think you're absolutely right. It does feel like that must be the point of disagreement in some way, doesn't it, in terms of this use of the rotation of players. It just feels like the obvious point, and one party is surely insisting that Gittins and Tosin and Badiashile gets minutes, and the other one is disagreeing. We just don't know which side of the fence it's sitting, and it makes it tricky for Maresca because, let's be honest, he's the one who's going to get the flack. He's the one who we're calling out on the podcast, and many others are, for over-rotating Tinkerman 2.0 and all that kind of stuff. And again, we don't know, but if he's being asked and given the remit by the sporting directors and ownership that, you've got a squad, you've got to use it, we've given you these tools, make sure you use them, then it does put him in a really difficult, almost untenable situation. So yeah, not what you need it's not what you want to hear as a fan, not what you need as a club. And again, it sort of feels like classic Chelsea, doesn't it? Just as, we think we're at the point of trying to build something again and get our way back up to where we want to be as a club, the infighting begins, and Maresca's weird press conferences. And yeah, as Joe alluded to, who knows what's going to happen in the long term? We can't forecast it, but a lot of pundits are saying that, once this sort of stuff starts, it tends to only go one way. Let's hope not. Let's hope that it can all be ironed out and Chelsea find a way through. But yeah, one to keep an eye on, I think. And look, I don't know where I even sit on it really, because we are guessing, but ultimately all I really care about is Chelsea winning football matches and Chelsea winning trophies. So Maresca's done enough for me in the last 6 months or so to say that he could be the man to do that. And right now, I wouldn't want to change. I think, again, it would be going into a huge point of uncertainty, whoever we appointed. So my point would be, let's sort this out, fix the problems that might be there, and just move forward as a club, because it's not helpful when people aren't aligned. Let's look ahead to Newcastle then on Saturday. If it feels like Chelsea have a bad record at Newcastle, and it feels to you like we've not won there in a while, then your feeling is right. We've lost the last 4. The last win at Newcastle was actually back in 2021, a game that I was at, and we won 3-0. Thomas Tuchel was manager. It was the game that Reece James scored 2 absolute worldies in, and by all intents and purposes, it was the year I thought we'd go and win the league. We were top of the league, absolutely flying, and we did one of our December collapses, which we are known to do. Since then, that was just around when Newcastle got their investment, but before they'd started their spending. And since they did obviously reinvest in the team, Chelsea have lost 4 and only scored 1 goal in the process. So it's not been a happy hunting ground in recent years. And obviously last year was that game where we started badly. Nicholas Jackson got himself sent off and we ended up losing 2-0. Big game Saturday for us. Newcastle are a little bit like us. I've got quite a few friends who are Newcastle fans. They used to work up in the area, and I was talking to one about their form last week, actually. And they're a little bit like us this year in that they're kind of going from the sublime to the ridiculous. They beat Man City 2-1 at home only a few weeks ago and looked absolutely electric. And then against Sunderland at the weekend, obviously their huge rivalry, a huge game. They basically didn't lay a glove on Sunderland, didn't create almost a whiff, and stunk the place out. So I think Newcastle are one of those teams you don't necessarily know what you're going to get, although they do always seem to raise their game against Chelsea, don't they? And you just know it's going to be fiery, and it's going to be, a difficult place for us to go, as it always is. I think little things like them playing a Wednesday night and it being a Saturday lunchtime kickoff, things like that can help. So I do think that goes in our favour. I certainly would rather be playing there on a Saturday lunchtime than a Saturday night, for example, where the atmosphere is always a little bit more raucous. So Chelsea have got to use that in our favour. I don't think Newcastle will be able to rotate, certainly as much as Chelsea did. It was 11 changes last night. I don't see Newcastle doing that tonight against Fulham, although time will tell, but I think it's unlikely. So I think should have more fresh legs in the tank for the game, which should play in our favour. And Newcastle do have injury problems, particularly at the back. They've got a few players who are doubts or certainly out. Although isn't it funny how many of these players tend to come back fit for when Chelsea come into town? But we'll see. Dan Burn being the biggest kind of potential loss for them if he's unavailable, as is currently thought. It's a big few games. We've talked about it a little bit. Next 3, Newcastle, Aston Villa and Bournemouth. I don't want to set out like we need to get 7 points a minimum or anything like that, because, take one game at a time. But we keep wishing and praying for a bit of consistency from this Chelsea side, a bit of backbone. I think going up to Newcastle and getting a good result would be a real statement for us this season. It would be a real sign that we have improved from last year. I think that's the big thing we've been calling for this season, is improvement. Show that we're better than we were a year ago. There have been points where we thought we were on that trail, and then the Leeds and Bournemouth games happen and you feel like, maybe we're not actually much better than last year. Certainly points per game were about the same. So this is the sort of one where you go, right, we got nothing there last year. Go and get something. Even if you come away with a point, that's not a disaster. If you can win, it's an amazing result. But yeah, it's that, isn't it, for us? It's time to go and show that we're growing as a team and we can go to these places and get something. There'll be no Esteval. We wondered why he wasn't in the squad yesterday. It sounds like he's got a bit of a small muscle injury. Hopefully just out for the one game and he'll be back for Villa. That's what Maresca said. That also maybe tells us why we haven't seen much of him in the last couple of games, which has felt strange, but perhaps he has been feeling something He didn't look his normal electric self, did he, when he came on against Everton? So perhaps a little bit of an explanation of that. And of course, we're bringing back lots of players who have been completely rested on Saturday, like Cole Palmer, Enzo, Reece James, etc. So that'll certainly be in our favour. But yeah, Joe, over to you. How are you feeling about the game? And I guess what are you looking for in terms of a performance? And can we win it? That's the question. But yeah, over to you, Joe, to round us out.
Chris, what a good question. What do I think about Newcastle versus Chelsea? I think we're going to get beat. Is what usually happens. No, it's a game that it doesn't fill me with any joy. Weirdly, though, I never think that Newcastle are that great. I've never really thought they were that great. I think they're a very overhyped team. I look at their squad of players and I think, who would I take in their side and put them straight into mine? Definitely you would take the striker, because clearly, he scores goals and he's a real handful and a nuisance. Bruno Gomes, possibly. There's a shout for Anthony Gordon. But other than that, not really. I think they're a very good middle of the road, upper end Premier League team, but I don't see them any more than that. I think the media love to make them a bigger story because obviously they won their first trophy last year. A fair play to them for that. I always think it's great for new teams to win trophies. It's brilliant. But I don't think they're a fantastic team. I think we should go there and look to get something. But Chelsea's record is just so poor. It just negatively makes you think, we're going to suffer. We've got this record against Spurs. We have a fantastic record against Everton at home. But at Goodison Park, which it was up until this year, has always been very, very poor. Our record when we play Brentford, for example, is dreadful. So we have these sides where we do struggle at certain grounds, and St James's Park has always been one for us where we've not ever won. We have won some games there, but it's always been a struggle. You're right, Chris. Bringing 11 players back into this side, which I think they possibly will do for Newcastle, will be a massive bonus. I agree with you. I don't think Newcastle can do that. I think they will have to play some of their players they play tonight, again on Saturday. And yes, and the kick-off time is a huge factor. I don't care what anybody says, that will make a big difference. An 8 o'clock on Monday night, or an 8 o'clock at 4:30 on Sunday, opposed to 12:30 on Saturday, I think is a good thing for Chelsea, and we must make as much of that as we can. I fully expect to see certain players back into the side. I think Cole Palmer should come back in, who will give us that little bit of cutting edge. I think that João Pedro, I think he had a decent game when he came on last night. I gave him a little bit of stick the other day, but I think he played quite well. I think Garnacho and Neto start, although they were brilliant when they came on last night as substitutes. And I didn't really mention Garnacho's 2 goals. They were taken so well. And I had a bit of a laugh this morning with a few friends who said, Garnacho's found his level, Cardiff away. But obviously they're just trying to be silly and trying to wind me up. But I think Garnacho's finish in there was what we wanted to see last week. I think if he can take that into this week's game, I think he could be a problem for Newcastle. And Neto, like we said, Chris, you said he's so far this season, had a really good breakout season for Chelsea. I don't see that stopping. I think he's a very, very useful player to have, and so far seems very committed to the cause. At the back, I think we're going to see, hopefully, Big Trev and Fofana come back in. I think it might be Gusto at right back, Cucurella at left back, and then we'll see James with Caicedo and possibly Enzo above him in that position. But like I say, it all depends on Cole Palmer's fitness and what happens with him, who plays where. But yeah, when you say it out loud, you look at that team and you go, that's a decent team. That's a very decent team and more than capable of going to Newcastle and getting 3 points. But like I say, our record there is so poor, it does fill you with dread every time we cross the white line. But as long as we can keep 11 players on the pitch, like we didn't do last year, then we've got a fighting chance against anybody. And I hope we go there on Saturday and take the positive vibes out of Everton and Cardiff in the Cup and use that in a good way and try and get 3 points, obviously, against Newcastle. So, yeah, fingers crossed we can do that, and we'll be back to, obviously, review the game afterwards, and let's hope it's with a smiling face and not one of despair and doom. And remember, every little thing is going to be all right.
Those were the Chelsea notes for this week. If you enjoyed the podcast, do us a favour and share it with a fellow Blue. and we'd love to hear your thoughts. So leave us a review wherever you're listening. Wherever you may be, stay carefree, and remember, every little thing's gonna be all right.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.